This episode of the Kind of Funny Gamescast is brought to you by Dollar Shave Club. Guys, you don't need to choose between price and quality to get an amazing and affordable shave. DollarShaveClub.com's the answer. To prove how amazing the shave really is, right now they're going to give you your first month free to join the club. DollarShaveClub.com delivers amazing razors right to your door for a third of the price of what the greedy razor corporations charge. Join the club just like I did and stop dealing with the drugstore hassle and battle the locked up razor fortress ever again. I've been looking good. Kevin's been complimenting me all the time. He's been touching my face, and he's just like, man, Tim, this is so soft. I'm like, thanks, Kevin. Dollar Shave Club. Anyway, just go to Dollar Shave Club, pick a razor from their lineup of amazing blades. I've been using their executive blade, and it's dope. Let me tell you what. See why over 3 million members like me love Dollar Shave Club. They're so confident in the quality of all their products. Now you can get your first month of the club for free. Just pay shipping. After that, it's just a few bucks a month. No long-term commitments. I know how you're scared of those things. Love and Sex Stuff every Monday, 9 a.m., except for right now because it's on hiatus for a little bit. Anyway, no hidden fees. Go to dollarshaveclub.com/gamescast. That's dollarshaveclub.com/gamescast. So topic 3, Greg.
Yeah.
You have a special friend here.
I do. His name's Greg as well. Hi, Greg.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Greg?
I'm doing great.
Is
Greg.
it weird to say your name, Greg? Because I never say my name all that much.
Yeah, I generally don't say my own name.
Yeah.
That's just a matter of practice.
Sure.
Kind of weird.
Tim, this is Greg Canessa. Colin, this is Greg Canessa as well. Yep. You should meet him as well.
Yeah, we've met.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, not on the episode, though. In the episode, it has.
I know
Greg
Greg
or whatever. Here's what happens, Tim.
Thank you.
Here's what happens, Greg. Now, Greg, for the record, before we even get into who you are, first and foremost, you're a Kind of Funny fan.
Absolutely.
You actually watch this garbage.
Can I swear? That's right.
Yeah.
I can swear.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know it. Yeah. We cast off
straight.
those shackles
That's
a long
right.
time ago.
Yes.
So, had we ever met before you came to the studio?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
maybe on one of those IGN tours when I was in there for other reasons. But
Sure.
I
like
don't-
a handshake and a pass it off.
handshake,
right.
exactly.
You have this lineage here in the video game industry. By the way, this is totally going to be a Steinbeck intro, as you're talking about. This lineage in the industry. We're going to start that topic here. But as a Kind of Funny fan, you know we value nothing more than our transparency with the audience and our clarity and our ethics and all that jazz.
Absolutely.
So what happened is Greg came through to show a mobile app called Sparkade. And it was to, number one, show us the app and see if we thought it was cool, but also to talk to us about maybe hosting an event around Sparkade, doing a live Let's Play and doing this thing in front of an audience of our fans if they want to come out to it. That is happening. It's in December. You can check the Twitters. We'll have you details on how you can RSVP. However, 2 things. I liked that as an event, sure, but I liked Greg so much that I told him he had to come on the Gamescast. Number 1, to talk about his long lineage in his career. Number 2, to talk about the fact of being a fan. The first thing you did is like, thank you for taking this. I know you guys hate mobile apps. I know you hate mobile games.
Exactly.
And then you said something that clicked for me where you're like, and I admit, most mobile games suck.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about your career and what it is, and then also, though, why mobile games suck and why Sparkade doesn't. Now, all of that I'm saying and telling you up front because that's not part of the Let's Play and the deal or the sponsorship or the event or whatever you want to call it. This is not in any contract. You are here because you are cool. You are here because I am actually playing Sparkade, and I am not as good as I thought I was going to be awesome when I came out.
Just like all normal guests, you hit me up. You're like, yo, do you want to have him on Gamescast? He's cool. Like, this would be a fun conversation. I'm like, fuck yeah, let's do it.
So I just wanted all that out to begin with so that nobody thinks that we're trying to pull a fast one on you when we start talking about the Sparkade event eventually.
Never.
Okay, good. So, Greg, explain. You came in here and I'm like, this guy with his bullshit mobile game. Great. Here we go. Can't wait to see this garbage. And you're like, oh, I also founded Xbox Live. Who the fuck are you? You know, what's the elevator pitch for you in the video game industry?
Yeah. So I mean, so first of all, I just have to say thank you guys. It's an absolute honor to be here. I legit am a huge fan of Kind of Funny. It goes way back even before that to Podcast Beyond. I was a huge fan and listener for years. I've listened to hundreds of episodes. So I feel like I know you guys, even though this is like the first time I've ever met. So it's a total honor and privilege being here to talk to you guys. So I just want to say that up front. I'm a video game lover. So first of all, I'm a passionate hardcore gamer. That's always where I start because at the end of the day, when I go home, I kiss my kids, put them to bed. Excuse me, I'm like spitting. But what I do is I go home and I play games. I'm a hardcore gamer, so I play console games mostly.
Yeah, that's what the hardcore do.
Yeah.
Fuck your PCs.
I play, I play at home. Yeah, PC Master Race, right? No, I'm a console gamer. I go back, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, you name it. I have all the consoles. I play everything. And so maybe not every genre. I'm not a huge sports fan, for instance, sports gamer fan, but I play most genres of games and love it. But my career, I'm super lucky because I am one of the rare guys, one of the 1 parts per million that actually aligns his passion with his career. So I have been fortunate enough to spend my entire career working in video games, 25 years. I most recently, I guess my greatest sort of claim to fame, I guess, I was the creator of Xbox Live Arcade at Microsoft. So I spent many years at Microsoft, 7 years, worked on the OG Xbox as well as Xbox 360, saw it through to the launch, and I was, the creator inventor of Xbox Live Arcade. Did that, left there, went to PopCap, worked at PopCap Games. You guys know PopCap, right? Joel and Zuma, PBZ. Worked there, basically evolving that company past, this is pre-EA days. This is back in the 07, 08, 09 times. Evolving them past sort of PC downloadable games, which they were really known for kind of in the early days, and getting into sort of more digital console, XBLA, PSN, as well as retail.
And the Vita, don't forget the Vita. I know PSN covers it, as Colin likes to point out, but I like to point out that it came to the Vita.
We shipped PopCap games on PSP. We did Peggle DS. You guys remember which Q Entertainment did? You guys remember Mizuguchi-san? I got to go to Japan a bunch of times and collaborate with Q on a special version of Peggle, which was super cool. Then from there, I went to Blizzard and was the GM of BattleNet. So was kind of the
holy shit,
the guy that sort of went over and was at the time it was pre-launch of StarCraft 2, and they had a vision to sort of reinvent BattleNet, the classic legacy gaming service from the 90s that StarCraft 1 and Diablo were on, and sort of bring it forward. This is 2009. Bring it forward to the era of Facebook meets Xbox Live. And so they had a big grand vision to kind of integrate it in with all their games and eventually even go beyond that. And so I headed up that effort, staffed that team and led that charge for a number of years. And we integrated in with StarCraft 2, launched Wings of Liberty, Diablo 3, World of Warcraft, starting with Cataclysm, in full integration with the next generation of BattleNet, and then of course Hearthstone. Then from there, I flipped over to the other side of Activision Blizzard and worked at Activision. So for several years, I was their head of mobile gaming for Activision. They tapped me. They didn't have a mobile business at the time, and they had said, "Hey,
tapped you?
We wanted." They tapped me. Bobby tapped me on the shoulder. No, they actually just asked me if I wanted to, work on mobile games and lead up a new effort for them. Which was the time, remember 2011, right? We all had iPads. We didn't know what the fuck was going to happen, right? Like, is this going to be this legit platform for gaming? Is our consoles going to go away? Are we connecting controllers to iPads? Like, we didn't know what was going to happen, right? And so Activision, for various reasons, decided, hey, we really want to be like,
let's try to figure this out.
Let's try and figure this shit out because, in case it's a kind of a hedge, right? In case console goes away, we gotta have relationships with Apple, Amazon, Google. We don't have any relationships with these guys. Like, we got to get in. So I worked on, was lucky enough to work with some brilliant people. Actually, a lot of people that whose work you're familiar with in the UK. We started a studio called Blast Furnace, which was because you guys are big PSP and Vita fans.
We are.
A lot of the guys that were at Rockstar Leeds came over and worked with us on Call of Duty games for mobile. So the guys that did Liberty City Stories, and you guys remember those, that crew, Rockstar Leeds, they came over and Mark Washbrook and Gordon Hall and some of those guys worked with us, and we did Call of Duty Black Ops Zombies, we did Call of Duty Heroes, the sort of free-to-play game. We did a number of different games.
Too bad they couldn't do Black Ops Declassified. We all remember that, don't we?
Never forget.
Oh, amazing game. Yes.
Made in apparently 2.5 weeks.
That classic. Yeah, that was... that's a story in and of itself, that game. But we could talk for hours. But anyway, so we tried some stuff. We tried a lot of stuff there. We did Pitfall, the remake of Pitfall as an Infinite Runner. We did Wipeout. We did a bunch of Skylanders games. Basically did that for a few years and then came over to GSN, which is where I'm at now, which is a division of Sony, doing Sparkade. So yeah.
Kevin's whispering Mike. I don't know why he would whisper.
Mike?
You can just yell Mike. You can just do this.
Stay
close
close.
to it. Don't
All
be
right.
afraid. Don't be. It scares everybody at first.
You got it.
Then you fall in love with it.
Okay.
We got it all good, Kev.
I'm kind of a loud talker, so I'm sure you probably hear me down the street.
So you created Xbox Live,
And I like how he
Arcade.
just drops it and walks away from it. I created Xbox Live
Yeah, wait,
Arcade.
so tell me a little bit about that. So Xbox Live Arcade obviously super important in terms of the genetic legacy of the industry. We take it for granted now, but the idea of this kind of more indie platform and stuff like that. But obviously Xbox was way ahead of the curve on that in console. So tell me a little bit about where that came from and how that came to be. Because there was, similar to what you're working with now, there was a stigma about those kinds of games back then, and there isn't anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the story of XBLA is actually a pretty interesting one. It was a product that almost didn't exist and shouldn't have existed. To be honest, it was not part of the plan for Xbox 360 at all. So it was an idea that I concepted in late 2003, and it was really a product of a number of things I was seeing in the industry at the time that were unrelated, right? So you rewind way back to 2003, right? You had PlayStation 2 killing it out there. You had OG Xbox trying to establish itself. We had just launched Xbox Live for OG Xbox, which was very limited, right? It was voice chat and multiplayer gaming.
Halo 2.
It was Halo 2
And Rainbow Six 3.
which
Come on.
defined that entire thing. In Rainbow Six, yes. There was a couple of really good games there, and you had that weird green dashboard thing that was like not software upgradable. There were a number of things at the same time that were going on in the games industry that had precipitated sort of the vision for this. One was iPod. And iTunes and the iPod were just starting to take hold, and for the first time ever, there was a legitimate path for users to get digital content downloaded directly from their PC onto their device. That was a foreign concept up to that point. Remember, 2003, we're talking big publishers, AAA. You want your game, it's got to be this development budget, and it's got to be this huge marketing campaign, and it's got to be $20 million, and you got to work with Activision or EA or Take-Two, or you're fucked. Like, you're not getting on the console, right? So there was no indie movement. Steam did not exist. There were no digital platforms. App stores, Google Play, iTunes, nope, none of this stuff. We were the very first. So the only path onto consoles was through a publisher. There was no indie movement. Retro gaming existed, but was really hard to make money. So you had Midway, Namco Museum. You remember PS2, PS1, Namco Museum 1 and 2, and 3 later. You had Midway, Arcade Treasures. You had some people trying to bring back retro, but they were not making any money because it was really easy to download MAME. The MAME movement had started up in '99. So I love that shit. Like, I grew up in the arcades, right? And so, I used to go to, Golfland and, play miniature golf and then spend 3 hours in the arcades. I used to have my birthday parties as a kid at Chuck E. Cheese's, and
Awesome.
we got unlimited tokens. And so I grew up loving retro games. And so that was happening, digital content distribution. And then I was just frustrated. I was part of the Xbox team, and I was frustrated with this path, this weird convoluted path to try and get games onto a console. It was unrealistic and dumb. And then the last thing is you had Casual. So Casual was a web portal thing, right? It was Pogo and MSN Games, and remember the Gaming Zone and all that stuff. All these like games,
Flash
games, and a web browser, and you like a $20 download, and those are cool games. But there was no way in hell you were ever going to see any of those games on a console. Like, just no one wants to play those games, right? Oh, that's bullshit. So wrote this business plan, this crazy idea, which was totally not part of the plan for Xbox Live. There was the Book of Xenon. You guys may have heard. There was like the 333-page thing that Robbie and Jay Allard and so forth had written.
I have no idea what you're talking about. What is that?
This was like a Robbie Bach talks about this in his book. If you ever read his book, like it's at Microsoft, they write these kind of concept documents. Basically, it was like a vision for the 360 and what they wanted to do with the console program after OG Xbox and how they wanted to evolve it to sell 100 million units and what the plan and the vision was. The 3-pager then becomes a 33-pager and a 333-pager, which they had called the Book of Xenon. Xenon was the code name for 360. And so at the time, they had this incredible vision, mostly led by Jay Allard, to be honest with you. I mean, he's the father of Xbox 360 and the father of Xbox Live, as far as I'm concerned. He was the guy that had the vision of, okay, we have broadband in the box. Where can we go with this thing? Multiplayer is just the beginning. Like, all the stuff, the achievements, the marketplace, the leaderboards, all the cool stuff, the party chat, all of that stuff.
All the stuff we take for granted now.
All the stuff we take for granted now was all novel concept stuff. Like, no one had ever done this stuff in history. And so my idea was, why don't we take and leverage this pipeline? Let's leverage this little pipe that we have, this broadband pipe that wasn't being considered for real downloadable content, and let's actually leverage it to download full game content for the first time ever onto a console. And it was, at the time, again, 2003, it was like, really? No. And why would people want to download small games and indies? Who cares about their games? And casual, no one wants to play Bejeweled on a console. That's dumb. And it was a lot of detractors, a lot of people that couldn't see retro games. No one wants to play that stuff. People only want to play Call of Duty. People only want to play Madden and those big games. And so it was an uphill battle. It was a total uphill battle. The business plan was two-phase. It was do a test concept on Xbox, OG Xbox, and if that worked, we would do full Dash integration, and the master plan was really to fully integrate it into the console for 360. And so we launched the OG Xbox version in 2004. It was actually the same day as Halo 2, probably the version that you don't remember. It was on a disc. I don't know if you guys remember this.
I remember discs.
It was on a disc, and it was we literally like had a hell of a time getting this disc in people's hands. We were polybagging it into like magazines, giving it away at trade shows. It had Ms. Pac-Man as a pack-in, and it was weird because we couldn't software upgrade the OG Xbox, right? We couldn't upgrade the dash. It was not Flash EEPROM upgradable, whatever call that, which is basically you can update the dash, right? So that basically meant that you could stick this in the tray, close it, you'd get this dashboard that had all these games. Every game had a demo. Every game had a free trial. Games were $10 to $20, $10, $15, $5, $10, and $15. They were all 50 megs or less, so they were easy to download. But the wonky thing was there were like 20 games in the original service for the OG Xbox, but you had to have the disc in the tray to access the content that you downloaded that was on your hard drive. It was like totally like not optimal. But we tried this thing and we launched it the same day as Halo 2. Of course, we got drowned by that. But Jay Allard had announced it at E3 that year, and we'd never seen any reaction from the crowd like this at we'd only had been at a few E3s, but we had
giving me the eye. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. So
I'll push you in closer. You keep talking.
I keep thinking that I'm gonna slam my mouth into this thing. Sorry. Okay.
I'm pushing
you.
you. I'm pushing him in.
Okay.
This is
Closer.
how you do it.
All right. This is great. Wonderful. Oh yeah. This is great. So great.
Oh my god. That took a turn for the
absurd.
Well, for whatever.
Turn for the absurd.
I liked it. So anyway, we did that, and we saw so almost nobody saw this thing, the OG Xbox version.
Sure.
But of the people that did, we saw a download to trial to purchase conversion rate about 8.5 to 10 times that of what we saw in, say, the PC industry. Like, we knew we were onto something because we had an amazing download rate. I mean, people were downloading these demo trials like gangbusters. We had up to 50% initial download adoption. Of the people that had stuck the disc in, people were downloading 6 to 8 of the demos, and they were converting to purchases at 8.5 to 10 times the rate that we were seeing in the PC space at the time. So we knew we were onto something. And that ended up being the initial sort of validation for being able to go on to 360. But even then, again, that was just the beginning of the story because it wasn't part of the master plan. And when you're at a big company like Microsoft or a Sony, frequently the little engine that could type of products are not the ones that end up getting a lot of the mind share, and you typically have a lot of their larger organizations or some politics involved, and they're let's just say that Xbox 360, Xbox Live Arcade had its share of detractors. So it was not a foregone conclusion that we actually were able to execute
you're gonna make it
and
on the unit
onto 360. We actually had, by the time we had determined, okay, this is actually something that people want and the success, we launched in November 2004. And remember, Xbox 360 launched November 22nd, 2005. So we had a year, all right? So we spent a few months, we validated, we were able to prove it. Almost immediately, we knew that this was something we wanted to do. The business plan had outlined a two-phased implementation, right? And so I immediately went and said, all right, I want to do the 360 version. Well, we had little known, like when you're doing consoles, right? Some of you guys may understand. There's the hardware and all that manufacturing, China and all that stuff. But there's also tons of people that are working on the back end platform, and they're working on the system software that actually goes on the device, right? And a lot of that nowadays, you have broadband, and there's day one patches, and everything gets updated day one. But back then, in 2005, you really had to have a really stable base operating system flashed resident on memory in the device to actually make sure the 360 didn't fall over at launch. And so the system software team was already well underway. They'd been working for years on getting 360 ready for launch. And since we were launching in 2005, November of 2005, we had to have the final software tested and ready in August of that year. So here I am, it's December. We're a month in, just even on the Xbox Live Arcade, OG Xbox experiment, and I want to integrate it into Dash. There's no plan for that. The Book of Xenon, the Vision, had a marketplace, but it was a really small marketplace. It was like hats and swords and gamer picks sort of stuff. There was a plan for achievements. There was a plan for leaderboards, but there was no digital content distribution service implied at all. And so long story short, went out to Jay Allard, December 10th, 2004.
A date that will live in infamy.
I'll never forget this day. It's probably one of the most, most important in my career probably is the day that we actually went as a Friday. And I sat in Jay Allard's office. I'll never forget it. And I asked, Cam Ferroni was there, who was the head of the Xbox Live sort of software development team at the time. And Jay was in charge of the whole project. And I remember sitting there next to his, he's a huge Eugene Jarvis fan. So we had a Robotron 2084 machine in his office. And so I sat next to his Robotron machine and I pitched him once again. He'd seen it before. Xbox Live Arcade was a concept pitch that I pitched to 5 executives at Microsoft, and they all shot it down. They were like, thanks, but no thanks. No, that's dumb. No, it's in conflict with our interests, whatever. No one wanted to fund it. Jay was the one to fund the initial OG Xbox experiment with a team of 7 people and a small content development fund back the previous year. So I went back to him and said, hey, Jay, it's working. Can we do this? And I pitched him these sort of gamer scenarios about how there was the male gamer and the girlfriend that might be interested in more casual content. There was the guy that might be interested in indie content. And, I painted these scenarios and I basically asked for funding to integrate. And the guy that was sitting there, Cam Ferroni, who's an awesome guy, but he was under the gun, right? I mean, they were 8 months from shipping the software, had said, hey, I don't have time for this. Like, this is cool, but we're out of time. Like, what Greg wants to do, he wants to integrate into the Dash. It implies a bunch of stuff that we don't have in the system. Like, we don't have a demo trial thing. We don't have a cloud storage license key thing. We don't have any of this stuff. Like, I can't do this. No. And Jay looked at me. He thought for a moment, and I'll never forget it. He looked out the window and he said, no, this is actually something we have to do. This is a key part of where we want to go with Xbox Live. This is a key part of the long-term vision for the service. Cam, you will work with Greg. You will figure out a way to get this done. He basically overrode him in the meeting in front of me and said, you will figure out how to get this done. Greg, you have your people, because I had asked for a few more people and another content development fund. You'll make this happen.
And how badass did you feel?
At the time, I just felt relieved because it was.
I was gonna say, I thought maybe you'd feel scared.
Yeah, I know that would be my thing. Shit, I gotta make this happen now.
I'm sure I did feel scared at the time. I mean, I just remember a tremendous sense of relief because we thought we were onto something, but yet at that meeting gone the other way, Xbox Live Arcade would not exist. And had it not existed, I mean, literally, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here, but if that did not exist, I don't think the indie movement would be where it is today. I don't think the app stores would be where they are today. I don't think PSN and WiiWare and all these other things would have happened the way they happened. So
no way, especially because of the year lead that Xbox 360 had on Wii and PS3. So you could see that. I mean, Greg and I talk about it, but PlayStation 3's app store on digital store used to run on a browser.
So
that's how like what they saw it. They probably saw what Xbox did and like,
we got to do
what
something.
What the fuck are we going to do? You know? And that's why you have Super Rub-a-Dub running on a goddamn browser on PlayStation 3 in 2006. So that's what's so fascinating to me about Xbox. Because we're more, obviously, I mean, candidly, and everyone knows, we're much more PlayStation-centric. But we play Xbox. We just played Gears not too long, a couple days ago for a 5-hour stream. But
we just reviewed it, too, in the topic before this one.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we're going out. We're recording out of order. But what I love about Xbox, what I'm interested in Xbox, because I owned an original Xbox. I bought it when I was freelancing for IGN when I was in college, and I bought Halo and all the stuff. And Rainbow Six 3 was a really seminal game for me on that console, getting me online because I didn't play online games. I played Dreamcast a little bit, like NBA 2K and stuff like that, but being able to even go online with that, and I was a freshman or a sophomore in college, and I would like have this kid live down the hall from me, and he was like really smart with computers. We'd be able to plug in the T1 lines from our dorms into the thing, but he had to like type all this shit into the Xbox to make it work. To think it wasn't a computer because we were using so much bandwidth, and then I was paranoid it was going to get shut down and stuff like that. And I was serving games when I was in class all the time because my connection was so great. And when you really think about the genetics of games, like you were saying before, Xbox is really important. It really started with Dreamcast and Microsoft's kind of involvement with Dreamcast, but yeah, exactly. But which is I think an understated kind of thing in the lineage of Xbox is really it started with Dreamcast, but with Xbox and Xbox 360, there's so much important shit going on with broadband internet in the original Xbox, which didn't seem very intuitive, and then with Xbox Live Marketplace, achievements, digital leaderboards, all those kinds of things. It's really, I don't think Xbox always had the goods with the games. I mean, that's always been my case. Like I think they have a few great exclusives and stuff like that, but they had the goods with how we play games, and I think that was a really important thing. And I think you're actually even seeing that a little bit with Xbox One now as well. Some of it didn't work out the way they wanted it to, but anyway, it's just an aside. I've always appreciated that about Microsoft and Xbox.
Yeah. I do think, we all have our contributions to the game industry, and I mean, the games industry. We're 30 years in on this. I have nothing but the most tremendous respect for Nintendo and what they've done and their accomplishments and what they brought to the table. Sony likewise has brought so much to the table over the years in terms of whether it's portable gaming, whether it's the PlayStation, and the popularization of Eastern content in the Western market, and so many contributions. I do think that Microsoft, just again, looking back and just looking at Microsoft's contribution so far to the industry, I really do believe it's on live and on the networking side is its principal contribution. The box is great. The games are great. I love Gears. I love Forza. I love, a lot of their exclusives. Absolutely. Halo is great. But I mean, if you look at the major contribution to the industry, it's been Xbox Live. It's been advancing the ball forward in a time when the industry needed that. They needed that leadership. They needed that kind of Steve Jobsian, no, we're going to put broadband in the box. We're actually going to push this forward, and we're going to propel the whole industry forward. And whether that's digital content distribution like Marketplace, like Live Arcade, whether that's, achievements, gamer score, leaderboards, voice chat, all the things, multiplayer gaming, synchronous, multiplayer gaming, which is, again, largely been popularized due to the push that Microsoft made in the early 2000s. I think it's his principal contribution. Yeah, okay, have they had some missteps along the way since then? Yeah, I mean, clearly, I think we all know that the focus on digital, the entertainment box in the home and all that stuff is probably TV.
Yeah, probably a step too far. But you could see based on, according to your stories and things we've read, and I'm really into the kind of the history of the industry, so I read a lot about this stuff as well. It seems like Microsoft's always really pushed forward and actually got away with it over and over and over again because it worked until that moment. And so you can see how it kind of backfired on them with Xbox One. But you could see also how they drew that conclusion, based on I don't want to say they got greedy. They just got bold and bullish with Kinect integration, with the cable box integration, voices, voice control and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, but you can understand since they were pushing this rock down the hill and it was just like it was working over and over again, and they were watching their competitor really react to that, because even when you look at PlayStation Network, which still isn't very good, it's better on PS4. People are like, it's not good. People that joined on PS4 that played an Xbox 360 were like, this network sucks. And I'm like, you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. None. Go on PlayStation 3 in 2008 and we'll talk about terrible networks. But you've always seen them play catch up with trophies, for instance, which was a total like a mea culpa on their part, being like, we
talk about that. I mean, cross game chat, something that took even longer than trophies to get in, do parties and do all this different stuff.
It's unbelievable the things that we were saying that are taken for granted that Sony really had to be reactionary to. I think Sony always had the goods with the games, and I think that mattered. But I don't think that. I think you're right, because the games aren't ubiquitous, because Uncharted's only on PlayStation. What's ubiquitous is the idea of a networked console, the idea of a marketplace that's digital. So when Xbox 360 launches, because I was poor in college, I was writing, I had what was I playing in 2005? So I saw my PS2, I guess PS2, GameCube, Xbox. So I was still working with those things. My roommate, Doug, who I think watches the show.
Do it, Doug!
Got his Xbox 360 and was obsessed with it. Remember him playing King Kong. With the 1,000
gamer score, baby.
Exactly. So easy
10
to get
chapters,
that
100 each. That was my first 1,000.
And I wrote the guide for it actually, based on the PS2 version of the game, which I think was identical in some way. But
nice.
what were the games that mattered in the because to me, Xbox Live Arcade and like Summer of Arcade and all those kinds of things really actually in my mind began. That ball started to roll a little later. Like it didn't seem immediately obvious that the marketplace, was this viable thing really until like it's really Shadow Complex, Limbo, like all these things are the ones that really come to mind.
Geometry Wars.
Yeah,
right?
Geometry Wars is a great one. Geometry Wars, yeah. Geometry Wars is fucking great.
That was our killer app, right? So that goes back, just to rewind a little bit, again to that sort of inception of XBLA. So remember, rewind 2004, 2005. What do people know, right? There is no indie movement to speak of. There's Garage Games doing Marble Blast Ultra. There's Wick Fable of Souls. There's a handful of games that came about in response to XBLA, and we actually funded and bootstrapped initially in 2005. But when I was writing the business plan, it was about what I call dimensionalizing the ecosystem. So there's a couple of principles that I really believe strongly in.
No, you're doing great.
And actually,
you're angling.
Yeah, this is actually
Exactly,
better.
that's
This is better because now I'm in direct line.
There you go.
There was a couple principles that I feel very strongly in. That are just personal passions of mine, right? One is curation. We can talk about that. Another is dimensionalizing the ecosystem. So when you're building a gaming ecosystem, particularly when you're educating the populace on something that they aren't familiar with, right? You're completely from scratch, something new out of the sky. Steve Jobs talks about this a lot at Apple. Like, people don't know they want an iPhone until you show them the iPhone, and then they're like, oh my God, this is fucking awesome. How could I ever survive without this device, right? Or your Android device or whatever it is.
No one's saying that about the Android devices.
No. But one of the things you have to do is you have to make sure there's a little something for everybody. And so you got to remember that when we're trying to create a new platform from scratch, from ether that does not exist, it was about creating a little something for everybody to attract a broad variety of people and throwing in a combination of things that were innovative and that people had not seen before, but also some familiar things, some familiar beats. And so when we went out and built up the initial content portfolio for Xbox Live Arcade for 360, which was our big bet, we had 20 games planned for launch day, 20 for launch window, 10 for launch day. And so there had to be a little something for everybody. Now, I'm a student of the games industry. I grew up since I was a kid playing games. And so what was I inspired by? I was inspired by Game Boy and Tetris. I wanted a Tetris. I wanted that pack-in that was like instant validation. I get this. I'm done. I want this thing. I understand how it works. Perfect. I was super fortunate. The beautiful thing of working at some company like Microsoft is you have amazing talent everywhere that you can tap into. We happen to have on my staff Alexei Pajitnov. Alexei Pajitnov is of course, the creator of Tetris.
He just happened to be on the staff.
He happened
Just
to be on the
chilling.
staff.
Janitor.
I need Tetris.
He was.
We got the Tetris guy.
He was just little known fact. This is games. The games industry is so small, right? And we were super fortunate because back in the days of Ed Freeze and Microsoft Game Studios, the EBU, the Entertainment Business Unit, right? That came about before Xbox. OG Xbox, it was a PC gaming business unit, right? They did Age of Empires, and they did these puzzle game collections, Hoyle, and all these little games for PC. And Alexei was hired in the late 90s to actually work on these PC puzzle game compilations. They didn't do very well, but Alexei was still very, very talented. And he was kind of like looking for new projects. So I said, I have the creator of Tetris working on my team. Like, hey, I am inspired by Tetris on Game Boy. Like, hey, maybe we didn't want to do Tetris for various reasons, but let's try and create our own Tetris. And so I went over, I talked to Alexei. This is back when I was just a little engine that could. Right? Remember, it was just me. And it was literally just me with a PowerPoint deck and then pitching executives. And then it was 7 people for the OG Xbox version, which was still nothing. And then we grew to 11. I went to Alexei and said, hey, do you have any ideas for a really cool puzzle game? I want the equivalent of Tetris and Game Boy. Can you come up with something? And he came up with Hexic. And so Hexic was Alexei Pajitnov creation. Of course, we had planned on that being the pack-in game that was included, and it was in every hard drive for the 360 launch. Fun fact, that was the very first Xbox 360 game to ever be certified. So because it was pre-launch, it was the first one through the pipe, it ended up being this awesome project that was both a super fun game and also critical to the development of the 360 and Xbox Live infrastructure because we didn't have any games. It validated the pipeline for certification. It was the initial poster child for Gamerscore and achievements, and it allowed us to test all of those systems internally and make sure they were working, make sure they were fun. So we had Hexic, and then we were able to go out, and this was privilege of my job, I was given a bucket of money by Jay and it said, hey, what do you want to do with this? And so, of course, I go naturally to some of the places that I love and some of the games that I love that I grew up with. So what do? I go out and try and dimensionalize the ecosystem. Need some retro. What are my favorite games? Gauntlet, Joust, Robotron, Smash TV. Midway, how about we do those? Done. Boom. Those are 4 of the games. PopCap, loved PopCap games. I want a couple of real casual games in there. Let's do Bejeweled and Zuma. Went out to PopCap, they signed up. I really want to do some pushing the envelope sort of indie game stuff. That's where Wick Fable of Souls came from, Marble Blast Ultra, some of the cool sort of indie games we had there at launch day or launch window. Cloning Clyde, if you guys remember, some really, really talented guys that were just, remember, pre-Steam. These guys are little indies trying to make it, garage games, little companies that had no distribution. They were literally trying to sell on their own websites at the time because there was no Steam, on the PC, trying to do $20 downloads. They came, it was the easiest sell in the world. They were like, oh my God, you're actually going to let us sell on console? I mean, yes, absolutely. We'll do whatever you want. So, and then we got to also work with some of our own partners. And this was the super fun part to answer your question about what was our killer app initially, Bizarre Creations. Bizarre Creations was our PGR partner. And so I go to, Ed and then Shane Kim and some of the other people that were running Microsoft Game Studios at the time and said, who wants to do an XBLA game? Now, of course, not everybody within Microsoft Game Studios was a fan of XBLA. So not everyone was like on team XBLA because some people thought it was a distraction. Some people thought it was going to cannibalize the whole games industry and shut everybody down. There were a lot of detractors, but for the people that were, Ken Lobb, there were certain people internally that were fans, and they opened some doors, made some introductions, and that's where Geometry Wars came from. So Geometry Wars is this little game, little offshoot from the uber awesome dudes at Bizarre Creations in the UK. The super talented people, right? You meet game creators for a job. You guys have amazing jobs. You get to meet game creators, and talk to them and interview them. You know that these people are not just like, they're not creative only with a racing game. They're creative people, right? And they love working on projects big and small. These guys were heads down working on racing games for years, and a crew of them, they were like, we just want to do something quick and fun. It ended up being one of the coolest unintended side effects of XBLA was it provided this creative outlet for game creators to actually try and experiment with little stuff.
Go blow off your steam there. You got an idea. Let's try to make it work over there.
Exactly. And then we'll make a little money on the side, but it wasn't even about the money. It was about the creative expression. And so, long-winded way of answering your question, the ecosystem at the outset was a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It was more of an emphasis as a proportion now in hindsight on retro and casual than it was on indie. The ecosystem needed time to gestate and develop, right? And really the part that I'm most proud of is what happened in 2006, 2007, 2008, in the heydays of XBLA, when now it's not about people, shipping their old games, or it's not about the stuff that was on casual games and all that stuff. That stuff was still cool, but really it was giving the indies and the indie industry time to go, okay, this is legit. We can form up a studio. We can form up a business model. We can self-fund. We can go attract the funding. That takes a year or 2 years. And then when you started seeing Limbo, Braid, Castle Crashers.
Oh, Castle Crashers.
You started seeing these games come out, Shadow Complex. These are the games that I'm most proud of on the platform. And that was the moment in time when I think the industry really, XBLA, I think, came into its own. I think the industry started to recognize the accomplishments, and I think it began to transform things. Now, honestly, it actually started to fall apart again, in later years, because I think Microsoft again lost its focus. I think it's all come full circle. Now that Phil's back in charge, I think things are coming back around again, and now they're refocused on indies and things are getting better again. But there was a period of time where I think Microsoft lost their way, and the service got messy and it got imprecise, and that's where I think I have to give props to Adam and the team at PlayStation, because they identified it. They saw XBLA for what it was, in some ways even more so than some people at Microsoft did. And they said, wow, some of the most creative, talented, innovative shit going on in our industry is the indies. And let's embrace that. When we go next generation, they were playing catch up with PS3. Let's be honest. I mean, PS3 and PSN was playing catch up pretty much the whole way. Part of that, there's a long story behind that. I'm sure you know all about it, about, Japan was controlling it for a long time. And then the San Diego guys were trying to help out, but they weren't in control. And it was in two places for a while. And they finally got it. It was too late. Like they made a ton of progress towards the end of PS3 when it came over to the States. But for a long time, Japan thought they knew what they were doing, and there were some issues there.
Yeah, and I think they basically acknowledge that they don't now that the center of power is actually just south of here.
Shifted it over to San Mateo, and boom, they've made such amazing progress. But in the time between PS3 and PS4, you saw, I got to give props, right? Sony Santa Monica and some of the first party studios. There was Flow. There was some interesting stuff there that was John Haidt and the guys that were doing some sort of first party PSN network, the competitor to XBLA, was trying to do some stuff, not just 2 years later XBLA ports, but they were trying to do some of their own stuff. That's where
they were
it started.
big on incubating things. So Sony Santa Monica in particular, right, of bringing people in and working with them and trying to make their game the best it could be.
Yes. And there were a few people that were leading the charge there, and they got some bandwidth and some budget. They did some great things. But in PS4, the time between late PS3 and PS4 is when Adam and the team just went, that's actually a competitive advantage. And of course, Microsoft got distracted on some other things for a while. We know that regime. And then they were all about, Madden and Call of Duty and entertainment in the living room and television sets. And that's when XBLA kind of veered off, and they went, we're actually now Jonathan Blow, let's go grab Firewatch. Let's go get the key talent, the Lorne Lannings. Let's go get the people. And then the PS4, obviously the famous now press conferences at E3 when they announced the two consoles, or before that, actually, before E3, when they announced the conferences. And Sony as an active part of their presentation was like indies, our XBLA. I didn't call it XBLA, but I mean them, and then what Microsoft had, which was, hey, here's your Madden and Call of Duty and television sets.
Let's talk about the Halo network we're going to make for you. Yeah.
Sports.
Right. Sports and more sports.
I
right?
love that.
FIFA.
That sizzle reel is still the best thing ever that those guys put together.
But it's come full circle again, right? And this is where, I mean, I think, I talked to Ryan McCaffrey about this. We did an IGN on XBLA, but
Kevin, cut that out. We don't want to promote that.
My reach was, you guys are still friendly.
No, we're fine. Everybody should listen. It's great.
But my call out to Phil and to Aaron and the guys is, XBLA was actually been decommissioned as a brand on the Xbox One. I don't know if you guys know that, but I mean, certainly you do. I don't know if all your listeners do and fans do, but that's crazy. Like I was searching for another example of a brand. It's probably the most successful. You're talking about a multi-$100 million business. Like XBLA wasn't this little side note. Like this was a multi-$100 million business. I mean, you talk about the later years in Minecraft and all the things that happened on that platform. It's probably the most successful brand in modern memory in the games industry, certainly, that has been decommissioned. And it solves lots of problems that Microsoft has right now. And so if you look at XBLA Wednesdays and Summer of Arcade, the ability to promote the curation, the discoverability in the App Store, which is another huge passion of mine. Like discoverability is such a huge problem in our industry right now.
No, we've talked about that on the show over and over again, which is a huge problem. The glut of garbage on these networks now.
And XBLA was that signpost, that badge of quality, like when you, especially Summer of Arcade, like if a game made it into the slotting there,
you knew it was going to be great.
You knew it was going to be good. And, you need that curation, you need that brand to really represent that this is something that you should pay attention to and also cut through the BS in the marketplace, right? You've got games like Inside, which are phenomenal
Inside
games.
is absolutely phenomenal.
Probably my game of the year so far.
I would say so.
And it is absolutely a 10 out of 10, and it is merchandised. Where is it in the marketplace? It's merchandised underneath. Best case, it gets a little blip alongside Destiny the Collection and Gears 4 and Forza Horizon 3, and maybe one time out of 100, maybe it appears there. And most of the time, it's search results only.
To a bigger question with that is what would surprise me about that, and I don't know if you have any insight into this because you're talking about using your bucket of money to go and buy these games or at least get some exclusive windows with them. What surprised me with Inside specifically was and I guess this is kind of a mixture between the old Microsoft and Phil Spencer's new, or old Xbox, Phil Spencer's new Xboxes. I was shocked when Inside's trophies popped on Exophase and PSN profiles literally 2 weeks after the game launched, and I'm like, you guys didn't even pay to keep this? Like I was like, we're gonna wait 2 years. I gotta plug in the Xbox at some point and play this game, and then it popped up, and I was like, that showed me a different kind of thing too, where I was like, this was literally on your stage at E3. Like this was a game you guys were talking about, and you have it for a month. You know, like, don't you guys? So it seems like that's changed a little bit too.
It has changed. I mean, it's really come. Again, I don't work at Microsoft anymore, so I mean, I know Phil. I love Phil. I love Phil and his team. I love Aaron Greenberg. I worked with Aaron back in the day. We did a lot of really fun stuff together. The Pac-Man World Championships, a bunch of other stuff. Side stories if you want to hear about him someday. But that business, as far as I can tell, has come full circle, right? So it went from we were ahead, XBLA 360. We were ahead. To wow, we're firing on all cylinders, to we got a little ahead of ourselves. We started jamming a bunch of stuff in there, and we also got a little ahead of ourselves in terms of being too aggressive with terms, and that pissed a lot of people off. And then what happened was, meanwhile, Adam and the team at Sony are like, we're over here, and they did some smart things, and they signed some exclusives, and they did some stuff, and then Microsoft's come back around because of Phil and his leadership, and they've refocused, and it's about gamers and not about entertainment. And they have now they have a developer program in ID at Xbox, and so it's very developer facing. They're still focused on indies and incubating indies and such now. I think they've now kind of taken their licks a little bit and kind of refocused, and I think they realize how important indies are, but they haven't squared the circle yet in terms of rounding it back around to the consumer experience. And this is the part I still think they have some work to do on, is from a consumer experience, a dashboard experience, and a marketing standpoint. They haven't said, okay, here's our brand, here's our curation, here's our discoverability, here's our Summer of Arcade, here's our promotion, here's all of the consumer-facing side of that. They've addressed or partially addressed or on their way to addressing some of the developer community stuff. And so I think Phil's orientation, and again, I'm not Phil, you should ask Phil, but I mean, Phil's always been of the mind, at least from the days that I know him, Phil's always been of the mind of, you know what, this exclusive stuff, like paying for exclusive, just in general, let's go AAA. Like, I think he's thinking, okay, first party exclusives, Gears, Forza, that stuff, really important, right? Important platform differentiators. But in terms of multi-platform exclusives, at least my observation, just as a gamer, no expert knowledge here, is that they seem to be kind of moving away from that. Like, it's about games for everybody, and games, you should be able to get to games. Like you having this indie game that premieres over here, and I have to wait a year to play Firewatch, or I have to wait a year to play whatever. It's just dumb. Mm-hmm. So like, why do that? And so I think a lot of those, you're seeing kind of the end result with an Inside or with a Witness or with a Firewatch. You're seeing the end result of some like back behind the scenes sort of business development deals.
Yeah, well, Playdead especially could probably, because I could have sworn, because you were talking about the terms. I know Sony was getting aggressive with the terms, and I thought that the story was with Playdead that they wanted Limbo exclusively, didn't they? Wasn't Limbo first pitched to Sony, and Sony was like, we want the IP?
Inside?
Yeah, no, was it Inside or was it? Because
Limbo was an XBLA exclusive.
I know that, but I might be confusing it with Inside, but I thought Playdead pitched Limbo to Sony first. And Sony was like, people out there can fact check me.
I don't know.
And I think because Sony usually wanted IP or whatever, and they were like, well, we're not giving the IP up. So then they just went to Microsoft, who didn't, I guess, have the terms that battened down yet. And then they both seem to be having, from the experiences from the people we've talked to, like the experience was more difficult with Sony at first, and then it got, like you were saying, got easier.
Flip-flopped,
yeah, because then there was no publisher. The idea of like you needed a publisher to publish still on Xbox Live Arcade in some way. You could self-publish with Sony, and then it seemed like a war of.
I could hear that eye roll.
Yeah,
it seemed like a war of escalation and then de-escalation, and we've heard it from our other friends, Dan, who represents Axiom Verge and other guys. The complications with the first parties on these digital platforms were extreme.
It was, and anytime you do, it's tough. And of course, I have my own perspective on it. My perspective, I'll just tell you, is like, it's hard anytime you create a new business, right? And especially if a business is new, disruptive, and successful, right? XBLA was never part of the plan, so there was no financial expectations behind it. There was no, it wasn't baked into the plan and the Xbox Live revenues and all that stuff. So we launched XBLA in 2005. We did our entire first year's numbers in 3 weeks. So 3 weeks.
And what is the ripple effect then at Xbox?
And the ripple effect, it was just the beginning of the fun, believe me. Because anytime something like that happens, it's unintended consequences, whatever, but it happens. It's a very challenging situation. You think it's all just cracking champagne and awesome, but it actually isn't. You have detractors that are trying to, they were trying to kill it beforehand. Now they're trying to grab it. They're trying to take it for their own P&L, right? They're trying to grab profit and loss statement. Sorry, the financial lingo. They're trying to grab the money. They're trying to own it, control it. They're trying to steer it in certain directions. There were a lot of people I had mentioned earlier, the detractors, right? There were a number of detractors throughout the organization around the concept of XBLA. Amongst the detractors were people that thought that we were going to blow up, literally destroy the retail model of console retail gaming for $60. We're going to erode price points, and we were going to kill the entire industry and kill the console business. There were literally people that said that at Microsoft pre-launch. There were other people that thought that we had no business picking game content, that we should be sort of, agnostic. So there were a lot of detractors. But when you launch and you have that much success, there's a tendency to pull it in a bunch of different directions internally. There's everyone that kind of wants to use it, not everybody, but there's a number of different people in positions of power that want to do different things with it. One of the things was, remember, we're only 3 years into the console business at this point. This is 2004, 2005. We just launched Xbox 360. We just got live launched in 2002. We just got EA on our platform in 2003. I mean, we're like a year in on our EA relationship, right? And so we had, not to just pick on specifically on EA, but I mean, as an example, there were people that were legitimately concerned that if we mismanage digital distribution of content or not give the publishers whatever they wanted, that we were going to piss them off and they were going to abandon the platform, like they did with Dreamcast, or not support it or whatever. And so that was a legit concern internally. Hindsight, it seems silly, but at the time it was the mindset of people. I understand that now. I don't fault anybody, but those were the times. And so when I was there, and the one thing that's cool is because when the creator is actually there running the team, there's a lot of sort of default deference to hey, well, Greg knows what he's doing, so he's going to pick the games and he's going to pick what's on the platform, et cetera. But then when I left in 2007, and when I left, it got pulled in a bunch of different directions. And so there was a lot of stuff we had in the pipeline. We had over 140 games in the pipeline. We'd shipped the first 75 while I was there. So we had a lot of games, and we had, again, the magical time, not correlated to me. I had 35 people, some of the best talent in the industry, working on this, right? Amazing people. That was a generation we got the Castle Crashers, the Braid, the Limbos, the Shadow Complexes. Was that 2007, 8, 9 period. It was very focused. And then what happened was you began to see it, because I left, and then there was a vacuum, and then it started to get pulled in a bunch of different directions. And that's around the same time that Microsoft, there was always, going back to 99 and the original pitch for the OG Xbox that you've all read about and heard about, this goes back to Bill. And Bill wanting to be, it's an entertainment, battle for the living room thing, and entertainment's got to be part of it, and it's all of that stuff. That never died. It was always an undertone on Xbox every step of the way through OG Xbox and 360. Robbie Bach was always keeping an eye on it. Of course, the guys like Jay Allard were like, yeah, sure, we need to win with gamers first, and we need to stay focused on games and gamers. And that's why I think we had that magical moment for a number of years where we were able to stay focused, and you had that integration between hardware, software, and services that they talk about a lot with Apple, like that seamless integration of all the different components were the key to success. And I think 360, frankly, was the high point of that. You then begin to see, after not just me leaving, but there was a change of the guard with a lot of people, right? Peter Moore.
And why though? But why do you leave, and why do you see this start? Is it just that you're on to another adventure, or was it?
Yeah, for me, it was. I'd spent 7 years at Xbox. I'd seen through 2 generations of consoles. I'd gotten Xbox Live Arcade off the ground and saw it through. I'm a builder, not a shepherd. I mean, just by personality, I'm more the guy to create something new and manage a team, staff up a team, manage a team, launch it, do something really innovative, see it through to a point to stabilize it, and then go build something else. And so for me, I wanted to go build something else. Mm-hmm. I tried to do that at Microsoft, just candidly. I tried to do that a number of times. My predisposition wasn't, I got to leave Microsoft. Microsoft was amazing. But there was a ton of people on Xbox. 360 was a hit. We had a ton of people come in. Everybody wanted a piece. Everybody wanted to direct it. There was a lot of push-pull. And, we had that moment where Jay was in control and Peter Moore was there and everything was aligned. The stars were aligned. We were launching. We were executing. And then this undercurrent of not Phil's regime, but the other regime, like that was, it's about it's about casual, it's about connect, it's about entertainment living room and TV and DVRs. And that was from my perspective, it was after I left, but from my perspective, that began to take hold. And what was sacrificed there was the focus on games, gamers, indies, focus on, some of the live features, I think got deprioritized that we want to do that were gamer features and in priority in favor of doing connect features and we remote sort of stuff. And
you mentioned when you came on, you're a hardcore gamer, and that's why as Xbox loses that, PlayStation doubles down on that, and that's why there's this different thing with PlayStation 4, Xbox One.
Bingo. And at the same time, all that was happening, and in my opinion, they were defocusing Sony, and it's funny, the yin and yang. Like it was exactly inverted when we were launching with 360, and PlayStation 2 they were really cocky, and they were commanding a bunch of sort of crazy terms from developers and doing a bunch of stuff behind the scenes. And then the Ken Kutaragi and the PlayStation 3, and you'll get a second job and all this stuff. And we were just sitting there going. Like at Xbox, we're like, oh my God, we would never do that.
Yeah,
and then shoes on the other foot.
Yep. Yeah,
5 years later.
That's what I was going to say is that it seems to happen in this industry. Not that I know any other industry like I know this industry, but like it seems like it happens in this industry over and over again where someone just fucks it up. It doesn't even seem to be. It doesn't even seem to be like the innovations on the original Xbox were great, but it didn't stop PlayStation 2 from selling literally 6 times more. Right. So like it was. It's the cartridge moment with N64 when they're like, but you have all these relationships with these publishers. They don't want to put their games on cartridges, so they're just not going to make games for you anymore. Like you didn't have to do that, but you chose to do that. And it's the same thing with Dreamcast with no piracy controls. It was the same thing with PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3 with the second job, and we can sell 10 million units without ever putting a game on it, and all the shit, the crazy shit they were saying about it.
George Foreman girl.
Yeah, and then it's the same thing with the Xbox One reveal, and it's this cycle that doesn't take a deep fucking thinking mind to identify. Where it's like it seems like it's not someone else coming in and stealing the thunder. It's always someone just tripping and falling on their face, and there's just someone else standing there shrugging, being like, I guess it's us now.
I'm just going to keep walking.
I think a lot of it's just human nature. A lot of it's underdog mentality, right? When you're behind and you're like, this is a more survival instinct. Like you gotta catch up. You gotta do something. And you are at a console generation border, and you have some innovative ideas, and it's a survival instinct kicks in. You're like, we have to be successful here, or we might have jobs. Like that kicks in, and I think certainly with PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3 and us going like, oh my God. What? And then I wasn't there for when that happened on the other foot, but the other shoe dropped. But effectively what it appears to be for me, and I know some of the people that were in the room, not all of them, they lost their way. And at the same time, PlayStation retrenched after PS3 and some of their difficulties and said, we need to stay focused. We want to innovate here, here, and here. We want to embrace indies. We want to do this stuff. They executed. Microsoft didn't. And we are where we are today. Now, that mistake, unfortunately, now it's been recovered, but that mistake is a generation, and that mistake is 30 million units. So we're talking, I don't know. I'm speculating on what the Xbox One install base is. I think it's 20, 25 million, whatever.
Yeah, not enough.
I don't know, but it's never going to catch up, right? So, but I will end the story on a positive note, which is with Phil, it's back, right? Because that guy is a gamer. He understands games. He's brought back a lot of the guys that were responsible for men and women that were responsible for 360. A lot of the people were still around, the Aarons, the Albert Pinellos, a lot of these great guys. And they are, look what happened when he took over. He's like, okay, back compat. Okay, refocus on live. Okay, back to...
The backwards compatibility was such a coup, man. I still can't believe... I just was like, Huge. I still think that was the biggest moment at E3 that year. I remember talking about it there or whatever, with the specific thing of like, you guys are actually sacrificing collection dollars and third-party dollars and collections and all these kinds of things to just do something very consumer-friendly that your opponent is just not going to do because of their investment in Gaikai. So like, it was a very strategic, I think it was way more strategic than people gave it credit for, where it was like, it wasn't only good for Xbox consumers, it's something Sony literally will not do because of the $400 million they spent to make sure that they don't have to do it, because they want you to buy the game again.
With Gaikai. Right?
With Gaikai and with PlayStation Now or whatever. The one question I want to ask you, I know this topic's running long, but I don't care because it's fascinating. we were talking about unforced errors and pushing the ball too far. I'm curious, as an industry expert and a veteran of this industry, what do you make of not the modular consoles, because they're not here yet, we might get those in the future, but the iterative consoles that we're now going to get in Scorpio, which I still don't really fully believe is not the next console completely, but the Scorpio and the Pro. What do you make of that? Because I feel like this is, with Pro specifically, I feel like this is, I don't know who's asking for this console. Scorpio, I feel like, is Xbox saying like we lost and we actually need to reboot as quickly as possible. So what do you make of all of that?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I mean, I would say a couple things. I would say, first off, it is truly about enabling gameplay experience that could not otherwise exist. I completely agree with your comment. Again, I'm a fan. I listen to your show. I know your guys' perspective on this. I wholeheartedly agree with what you've been shouting from the mountaintops ever since the PlayStation conference, that it is not about graphics processing power. If you want to do that, go be a PC Master Race guy. Like, great, that's awesome. But it is about enabling experience that we cannot otherwise have. Where I get excited is VR. Where I get excited is the Crackdown demo, where they were like, check out this cloud processing power, and you could never do this if you didn't have this cloud processing power. Now, we haven't seen that game come out yet, but I mean, the promise of that is interesting to me, right?
People using the tech in a different way to make the game better.
Yes, exactly. People using the tech in a different way to make the game better is where I feel like it's at. This whole iterative console thing, I think the way it's being presented to the gamer is confusing. I think it's amazing to me. Like, we're 30 years in this business. You think there's just kind of a playbook on like how to market things. Then we see Wii U and the naming mistake. We see the PlayStation Pro. We continue to see us make the same mistakes over and over and over again. The benefits of console gaming, again, for me, maybe I'm old school, write me off, I don't know. But I grew up in the NES, SNES days, cartridge gaming, Game Boy, stick it in, turn it on, play. That's awesome, right? Now it's like, okay, I do this thing, I turn it on, I boot the thing, I stick it in, it's a 50 gig install, I gotta patch it,
firmware update coming in,
it, there's a firmware update, and there's I go to the store and there's 8 consoles, I know which one to buy. It's just confusing. I don't understand why we don't just simplify and just get it to the user experience. It needs to be more about simplicity and customer experience. I'm a huge fan of Apple's because I think they do a great job of this in a couple of ways, right? First, vertical integration of hardware, software, and services, right? It all comes from the same place. It all works together. That's a key principle. Second principle is curation, which again we can get into more.
Yeah, we're getting close to the next topic.
But the third is simplicity. And you go to Apple's website. There are no more than 8 products they're ever selling at one point in time. It's not about, and they're one of the world's most successful and biggest sort of technology companies. Yet they're the masters of simplicity, explaining complex concepts to people in very simple terms. And so I think the console industry still has a ways to go to learn from companies like Apple in terms of how you message and communicate to the user from a marketing standpoint. From a product standpoint, again, it comes back to the experience for me. And it's not about graphics processing power. I think what's going on right now is confusing. I love the concept of Scorpio, but Scorpio feels to me like, and I don't know, because I don't know what it is yet, but based on the promises and based on the E3 reveal and
the teraflops.
And based on my faith in Phil and team, if it truly is 6 teraflops and it is high quality VR, Oculus style or Vive style plus VR out of the box without a sidecar and 12 cables and all this shit that you have to deal with right now. It's a mess. Like, if it truly is that next leap forward, then I'm in. I'm all in. But it can't be about 4K HDR thing, about some TV I'm not going to buy for 4 years and some nuanced little thing that it doesn't.
The blacks are blacker.
There isn't. Yeah. And what's that going to do? I mean, that's great, but what is that going to do? And there's like 5 people that have that TV that can even show that. So I saw actually Forza Horizon playing on the PC with HDR on it. It's amazing. Native 4K, it's fucking amazing. But it's not this leap forward, right? We all grew up in the eras where the earlier generations were like, wow, PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2, wow. PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3 in the HD era, wow. Huge leaps and bounds, right? This is like Maslow's hierarchy. We got through all the days of like fundamental food and shelter and, sticks and caves, and now we're in these levels of the upper levels of the pyramid where we're talking about refinement. It's less about graphics fidelity now. It's about capabilities and immersiveness and experiences that you can't have elsewhere. And so that's my answer to your question.
Amen.
It's really about the experiences that we can provide. And until it is, don't come out with another console. because my consoles are awesome right now.
Agreed.
Like, I'm completely good with this. And the one part I love is the back compat idea. Not just back compat on Xbox One, but the idea of back compat, meaning my library comes with me. XBLA obviously is a creative XBLA. I love the fact that every week I go in, I'm in the preview program, and more of my XBLA games are lit up on that right side that I can download. Obviously I work there. I have 150 XBLA games, right? And just a couple at a time, they're lighting up. I didn't lose Joust. I didn't lose Robotron. I didn't lose Castle Crashers. They're there.
Yeah.
So I love this concept of being able to carry my collection with me over the years and having it cloud-based, so I don't have to worry about my local storage, or do I have a 2 terabyte or a 500 gigabyte or whatever. Like, I recently made the leap to 2 terabyte on both my consoles, because 500 gig was too small. Like, I was not buying games digitally because I don't want, like, I play a bunch of games at one time, and like 8 retail games, and I was now uninstalling things I was still playing because of my file size. 2 terabytes, I'm not doing that anymore. So I have enough where I can load up everything and still have some casual stuff and some digital stuff and still have some room to spare. So I'm now getting past that point, but irrespective of that, not everyone has the privilege of being able to buy a 2 terabyte hard drive like I do. So having that cloud-based experience that transcends generations is super important. And I'd love to see Sony do it. I'm not super in on streaming. I've heard streaming tech pitches for 15 years. I've yet to see a successful implementation of it, PlayStation Now included. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm a big believer in ownership of games. Like, I'm not a renter, I'm an owner. So I like having game collections. But digital is a great substitute for that. Like, give me the games, just make it cloud license, right?
Absolutely.
So
Love it.